Hello and welcome, girls and boys and girls, to another edition of Ask Guillem. This one, I've got a few things to tell you, actually. So hang on for all of them. Or maybe somebody will just put them in to the really important ones, as I've seen you doing. Cheeky. Anyway, let's go straight into the questions. Abdallah is asking what happens when the respective leagues resume and a player or staff gets infected with the virus. I wanted to put this one first just to update you on what La Liga is thinking right now. And on Sunday, Javier Tebas, the head of La Liga, who is the engine of all the moves that La Liga are going to do, with the backing of practically all the clubs, and with players and coaches who are trying to adjust to what's coming and perhaps modulate a little bit, influence a little bit the decisions. But generally, Tebas just pushing it. Basically, he said that he would like La Liga to return on the 12th of June. That gives the players about a month, more or less, of preparations. Barcelona, Madrid have started training individually in the last couple of days. And then, in theory, on the 18th of May will be more group training, and eventually that will become, of course, training together, etc. So more or less a month. But in the same place where Javier Tebas talked about that, it was a television show. Gerard Piqué, one of the captains of Barcelona, was interviewed as well with Tebas present, and he said, well, it'd be nice if we would have a little bit more time. So perhaps 12th, the 19th of June could be the start or restart from La Liga. Now, the thing that Tebas said, by the way, it could well be that the first game would be the Betis Sevilla, the Sevilla derby, could be the first game to restart La Liga. Which, you got mixed feelings about, because on one hand, there won't be fans and it's one of the most atmospheric games you could find. On the other, it's an exciting return to La Liga. But one of the things that Tebas insisted on is that there's going to be so many filters, 3 waves of serological tests, plus regular PCR tests. The PCR tests are the ones that there's a swab that they put through to the throat or the nose, and allows you to find out if if you got the threats of the virus. And the serological one is the one, the blood test, which tells you that if you've developed antibodies, so if you've had the virus or are fighting it. Now, La Liga found that 5 players have shown to be positive in the first wave of tests. But also they found out that out to I think it was 2,500 tests, 16% have developed antibodies, which means that they've passed the virus, they've beaten the virus, which is an interesting proportion because it's more or less the same as society, even though footballers don't really represent society as such, because they're young and I hear you say rich, but in terms of body and physique, doesn't represent us, does it? Most of us anyway. It's a small number of positive tests, so looks like everybody's been very careful. But Javier Tebas was saying more, because it's going to be more tests at the point where the player gets into the pitch. It's very unlikely, not to say almost impossible, that anybody will be infected. They will disinfect the gloves, the balls, the facilities, the showers, everything. So Tebas was saying at the point of playing the football, it'd be the safest place to play football. He said something else. If in the very unlikely scenario where everybody would have had a test 1 or 2 days before the game and shown to be negative, but you know that the PCR test could show positive a couple of days later, even though it was negative originally, it could just well be that you're developing the virus and the PCR doesn't see it. In that very unlikely scenario, because as I said, there will be regular PCR tests, in that unlikely scenario, La Liga have calculated that the players don't spend close time together consecutively for more than 67 seconds. That's a stat that they produced, which means that according to the World Health Organization, you need to be 15 minutes within a close proximity of somebody to catch the virus. I know that there's not enough information, but it suggests that when you play football, it's going to be very hard for you to catch it once you've gone through all these phases. Plus, La Liga would like the players to be confined in one space, perhaps 1 week before the restart of the season. They would like, for the 5 weeks of the competition that's left, for them to be confined. The players don't want to do that. So it may well be a week before, like they do in Germany, or maybe a week after the end. Sorry, a week before the end of the season. We will see. That has not been approved, and that's still been in discussions. But the engine is going. The train to return is going at a good pace. There has been one or two ethical conflict, and rightly so as well, because how is it that you manage to get so many tests for the players and the families? If a player gets infected with coronavirus, the relatives as well can get tests from La Liga, paid by La Liga. How is it possible that you get that when some of the first line workers, they don't get that? And then it becomes very complicated because the government has allowed private companies to buy those tests, and there are hotels, there are car manufacturers that have bought it for the workers because they have to look after the workers on their return to work. So somebody will have to answer that. But football and La Liga are saying, right, we are trying to put this in motion because the government wants to, because we are allowed by the health authorities, and because it covers 185,000 people that live directly or indirectly from football, and it represents a huge percentage of the income of the country, of the money moved by the country. So there's all those reasons for it, and as I said, they are planning ahead to a point, and that is the Abdallah question, which I've taken a long time to answer, which is that if it happens during the competition, what happens then? Not only who is responsible, the doctors, the La Liga, the player himself, which is a different matter that could have legal repercussions, but what happens then? And the answer is, there is no answer. Tebas will tell you that you only have to plan on what you see happening, not on what may happen in a month and a half time. Fair enough, because he wants to send as many positive messages as possible, but at the same time, there's no answer because I think everybody knows the answer. If players catch it during the competition, you're going to have to cancel the competition. And nobody wants to discuss that right now. Not in the Premier League, not in the Bundesliga, not in La Liga, not in Serie A. But it's a certain possibility. So there's still a lot of obstacles to go through, but that's the latest on it. Thank you, Abdallah. Marco MK13, he says, I panicked to Barcelona rumors true. They're very true. 30-year-old Pjanic, who is a centre midfielder that can have defensive and offensive obligations, a good engine, lots of quality, lots of running. It gives a lot of good energy to the side. Perhaps alongside some of the youngsters that they plan to use from next season, like Aleñá and Riqui Puig. The young may benefit as well. Busquets, it could be a replacement for him. They're trying to get rid of Rakitic. And the idea is to actually get Pjanic. Juventus, like all the Italian clubs, are very happy with swaps. We'll talk about Lautaro Martinez in a minute, of Inter to Barcelona. But Pjanic is one of the ones that Barcelona are talking to Juventus about in exchange of what you want from us. Todibo, for instance, who's was wanted by Juventus before Barcelona got him. And quite possibly it will become a good centre-back, even though we don't know yet. He's got a lot of conditions for it. And maybe they'll need more players. He's a 30-year-old, of course, whose contract finishes in 2023. So there is still, there's no rush for Juventus to sell from that point of view. But yes, they are thinking of a swap. They are negotiating that. It's not the only one. As I said, we'll talk about Lautaro Martinez soon. Ben 23A is saying, do you see any managerial changes in La Liga this summer, such as Rubi at Betis? I'll tell you something I've heard. I think Unai Emery is wanted in Spain and is seriously considering the possibility of joining a club in Spain. And I think there is a bunch of clubs of the level that Unai Emery deserves and will accept, and Betis is one of them. So I'm not saying that Betis will go for Unai, but what I'm saying is at that level, and there isn't many, Valencia could be the other one. Real Sociedad is doing well. Villarreal, perhaps, another one. Those kind of players, those kind of clubs like Valencia, Villarreal, Betis, that's the kind of level that Unai Emery will be happy to go to. And there is one, see if I can find out at some point, that wants him and is, I think, seriously considering that. But there won't be many more changes after that, obviously, depending on the clubs that go down, that perhaps will have a relevance. But in any case, although I would like Abelardo to stay, even if Espanyol goes down. But this is what I wanted to tell you on that. BB Boy Serge, who is a regular here, says, with such massive money losses from not having match days, do you think it's really possible for clubs to survive until 2021 with no fans attending games? Are you talking about La Liga? Are you talking about the Premier League? But the quick answer is yes. We will have to see what happens with the Premier League. As you know, there is a block of 6 to 8 clubs that don't want to accept the idea of playing in neutral grounds. And perhaps you'll hear more at the time that this comes out, because, of course, on Monday there's a meeting of the 20 clubs, which I think is a continuation of the conversations in which the bigger clubs, for their own interests as well, not just for the common good, but for their own interests, they want to play. Some of them because they want to qualify for the Champions League. Some of them because they want to finish the season and win the league, etc. Basically, they want to push the bottom six not to accept. To accept the new conditions, the new way of playing. And there's a big obsession in the Premier League, has always been from the beginning of the coronavirus and the pandemic, on the integrity of the league. There are more, started with 2 or 3, but then more started to think that if the league is not as integral as, if there is no fair play in it, if it's played in a different way that has been played so far, like playing in neutral grounds, of course, well, then maybe they shouldn't play at all, because it doesn't keep the integrity of the competition. So we'll see what happens with that. The thinking for some of them is that it will be less cost worth, or what would be the word? It will cost them less to actually finish now and restart in September, when perhaps there are better medicines to help those that get coronavirus, even though there won't be a vaccine. But you may be able by then to open up the gates to a third of the seats in the stadiums, maybe late in the year, maybe in January. That will be bringing some money. Also, if you stop now, you lose between 80 to 100 million pounds. But if some of the clubs go down, they will actually lose the money that comes from television, which is about 100 again, and they will only get about 7.5 million from the championship. That is obviously a big issue. But thirdly, as well, there is the fact that a lot of clubs depend on the transfer market, on selling players and bringing money that way. Some of it to pay debts, some of it to become stronger in the market, and some of them to actually get players that make the team better. So the transfer window is important, and those clubs are saying, or some of these clubs is, if we stop now, we've got time to plan ahead and to have a decent transfer market for everybody to actually raise the money that they need, or some of it anyway. Yes, there will be, of course, losses. As I said, it's calculated that if the league gets played, it will be a 30 million pounds losses. But if it doesn't get played, it could be 130 million. But that 100 can be found next season by getting more television money. There will be an impact, no doubt about it, by reducing the wage of the players and by being clever in a transfer market that if it's long enough, you can make the moves that you want. That's one of the reasons why they don't want the competition to restart. But another one is, as I was saying, because some of them clubs don't want to go down, obviously, and the cost of it could be huge. In La Liga, for instance, those losses will still be important, but they want to play the season, so at least they get the money for this season, which is still, I think, that at the end of May has to be another payment from the television money to the clubs. And yes, there will be, depending on the clubs, the losses will be big or not so big in terms of gate money. Real Madrid will have they calculate 120, 130 million euros for the full year without fans. But, for Getafe will be much less. And that's why they calculated that perhaps there won't be fans most of next season. They've given the season ticket holders the season ticket away for free next season. That's what Getafe has done, which adds added pressure to the other clubs. Now they have to decide what to do, how to treat the fans that haven't been able to see the last 5-6 games at home, having paid for them. As you can see, there's so many complications, and there's not, League One and League Two in England, they're going to be suspended, cancelled. I'm sure about that. But Championship could be as well. It looks very likely that that's the case. And then what do? Do they actually go up? West Brom and Leeds? How about who else goes up? And remember, the EFL and the Premier League are two different entities. So if the Premier League decides to suspend the league, it's getting too complicated now. With this, I finish. Suspend the league, and they decide not to have relegation. The EFL are going to take them to court because they want those teams to get relegated, and they want to bring 3 up as their contract, as the contract that the Premier League and the EFL have got says. Did I bore you enough right now? But yeah, complications are huge, and some of the Premier League clubs are saying, look, if there is no relegation, the parachute money, we can give it to the clubs affected, West Brom, Leeds, whatever else, and you distribute it whatever you want. I can tell you something else to convince the bottom 6. Some of the top clubs are saying, how about if we give you this player, or there is this compensation for you to vote in our favour? That's the kind of negotiations that are taking place. Fascinating in a way. T-Voice K says, with Leroy Sané looking certain to leave City for Bayern, is Pep looking for a replacement, or does he already have targets? That's the biggest point I wanted to make on this video this week. Just one quick note on Dembélé, for instance. We published in a Sport that he is ready to go to train, to actually not to train with the group or individually even, but to continue the rehabilitation. They reckon in a month and a half he could be ready to start playing, Dembélé, but Barcelona replaced him with Braithwaite. So what Barcelona want to ask the federation is, can he actually be joined if he is fit for whatever is left of the season, maybe a month or so, even though there's a big risk. They want to have the possibility of doing so because those contracts are finished on the 30th of June, the loan deals, they say it's going to be a flexibility. So you can renew the contract from the 13th of June until the end of the season, and the loan deal exactly the same. Well, Barcelona is saying, if that's the case, why aren't we flexible about this? He's now ready to come back. Can we use him? I think the federation will say no, but Barcelona will definitely try that. And on City, obviously, in terms of signing and what to do next, this season and next, or in terms of signing next season especially, they need to find out what's the money that's going to be lost. Is it 30 million if the games get played until the end of the season, or is it 130 if the games, if the league is suspended? So, meanwhile, they have decided already that they want 4 players for next season. 4 players that can be in the lineup, straight into the lineup. So they calculated that they looked around for what's available, of course, and the plan was that if there hadn't been a pandemic, perhaps they could have focused on players that are more expensive, maybe. But right now, between swaps and adding 20 million here or there, they think they can still get those 4 players. And if they sell Sané for 60 or 70 million euros, which is what they're asking for, I've calculated in euros, but calculated in pounds, 55 or 65 million pounds. If they sell him, then they will be able to replace him. But even if they don't sell him, they will be looking then for 3 other players. They are very happy with what's in the midfield and in the attack. They're very happy with the developing of Gabriel Jesus and, of course, Kun Agüero. May have thought about leaving next season, not anymore, of course, he's staying. And as I said, a substitute of Sané if he doesn't arrive. But basically they want 2 centre-backs and 1 full-back. And perhaps a centre-back that can play a centre midfield as well. But they reckon that they are sorted in the centre midfield position. So that's what they want. And the other thing that will change is the goalkeeper, the substitute goalkeeper. I've got the impression that they're going to bring back Zach Steffen from Fortuna Düsseldorf, the United States player, who was on loan to Fortuna Düsseldorf. Because with Bravo, they don't seem to reach an agreement. He wants 3 more years, 2 + 1 even, and City will be happier to keep him for year after year after year, depending on his performances. So if there is no agreement, that's the plan, sack Steffen back to Manchester City. They look at other things. Of course, they looked at Lautaro Martinez, because he clearly is, in his mind, he wants to leave Inter Milan. But the cost is 111 million euros plus 20 million euros of commission, which are still asking these people. He only wants to go to Barcelona or Madrid. And as I said in the past, Barcelona think that they've got an agreement with him. And now the plan is to convince Inter. Inter would like Arturo Vidal, and they need perhaps 2 or 3 more players. Rakitic has been offered, and others. And then when that agreement is in place, then the swap can take place. Lautaro Martinez to Barcelona, if Inter Milan agrees with the players that Barcelona are offering. And yes, Manchester City, not only Manchester City, but City looked into it, but they're just out. They're not interested anymore. They just got Lommel SK from Belgium. They bought that club. And they say, well, how can they buy in clubs and they won't be able to make big splash in the transfer market? Different things. They got money coming in. They sold 10% of the City Group for $500 million to the USA private equity firm, which means that the money is in the bank, but they cannot use it to buy players or for the first team. They can use it for other projects, like making the City Group even bigger. And of course, there are now a lot of opportunities all over the place for clubs that are in debt and they don't see how they come out of that debt. So they can just grow that way. The City Group is perhaps one of the most solid football groups that are around. The value of, I think, is $4.8 million. I think I saw last. $billion. So they're quite sorted in terms of the group and the strength of the group. And of course, they can buy a lot of players that can go into those clubs, and that's how they're going to function. So that's what I wanted to tell you. And with that, I'll leave it here. Until next week. Bye-bye.